Hello, everyone. Today I'll be talking about computers and how they work and stuff. Everyone has computers, whether it's a cell phone, a laptop, or even a desktop computer, but not everyone knows just how they work. Today we're going to be going over the history of computers, the software of computers, and the hardware of computers, just to see how they work. Starting off with the history, it starts off in 1937 with the Model K by George Stibitz. It was just a proof of concept that he made, and at the time it was considered very impressive. In 1940, the first actual computer was made. It was the CNC complex number calculator. It was made by Bell Telephone Labs, and it was the first computer that could actually do calculations remotely. Um, the first uh, large scale computer was made by the University of Manchester. It was the SSEM, small scale experimental machine, also referred to as the Manchester Baby. First with memory and to run code on it, and yeah. Um, After that, not many advancements were made for a while, with some small things being just a few more computers being made. The first computer with an keyboard input in 1956, and then the first commercially viable computer. However, in the 1970s, Apple started joining the market, and they made uh, commercially viable computers. Uh, and then Atari made their 8-bit computers, and then Motorola started making microprocessors. Through the 80s, there was also little innovation, and except for how just computers kept getting smaller and then slightly more powerful and better priced. Into the early 90s, the first laptops made by Apple, the PowerBook, which had little commercial success. The first handheld computer was made with Apple's Newton, and that revolutionized the market at the time. Um, After that was the first phone with a camera called the J phone, made by a Japanese company named Lightsurf. And then in 2007, the first iPhone was made, and it was the first handheld device with an app store that you could download apps from, and it was also the first handheld device with a touchscreen. All right, next up is the software of computers. A computer is defined as something that can take in information, store the information, process the information, and then give an output. Um, the way they do that is through looking at code, mainly binary, but sometimes also hexadecimal code, which is made up of numbers that they use to run calculations. Um, the way that we tell computers what to do is through code that is either things like C++ or JavaScript, which the computer then will take that code and then translate it into the binary or hexadecimal code that they can read. All computer processing is just a lot of different calculations that they do, and that is why the languages that computers read are numbers. So even if it may not seem like it, whatever the computer is doing is actually just math. Now onto the hardware of computers. First off, we have input devices. Most computers either use a keyboard and a mouse, but some also use a touchscreen. After that, you have the output, which is usually a monitor or can also be a form of screen. Onto a motherboard. A motherboard is pretty much just what all the components connect to so that they can all talk to each other. So this is like the body of the computer. After that, we have how they get their power. They get it through a power supply. Uh, this just regulates the power and makes sure it's not getting too much or too little. And then these come in modular, semi-modular, or non-modular, which means you can remove or add cables at any time. After that, you have storage. Some of the more popular ways of storing is through a hard drive, which uses physical disks, and then it imprints things onto them. You also have an SSD, which digitally stores the information, and then you can also have an SD card, which is similar to an SSD but just smaller. You also have your short-term memory, which is often referred to as RAM, randomly accessed memory. And these usually come in sticks, with the average computer having around 8 to 16 gigabytes of RAM. Next up is the CPU. You have two main types of CPU, with one where the main difference is just the socket they fit into, with one having pins on the thing and then the receptors on the motherboard, and then the other having the receptors on the CPU and then the pins on the motherboard. Then onto the GPU. This just processes your graphics, and you have two main forms. One where it's a dedicated GPU, and then one where it's a integrated GPU inside of the CPU. To go over what we learned today, we went over the history, the software, and then the hardware of computers.